This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsa Hone, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. At least, that's what most of these videos do. Sometimes, I like to look at cards on the other end of the spectrum, the worst cards ever. In one of last week's MTG Top 10s, I looked at the best Simic cards, and we saw, of course, some busted cards on that list, but there are also some terrible Simic cards out there. I mean, there are 208 cards with a Simic identity, and in this video, I'll give my picks for the 10 worst ones. Obviously enough, this video is more subjective than most of my MTG Top 10s. It is based primarily on my opinion, and not exclusively on data. However, I do use a little bit of information to help me make my picks. In particular, cards on this list had to meet two criteria. First, none of the cards on this list have ever top 8'd a major tournament, and second, none of them are widely played in EDH. Most of them are also not very good in Limited. Alright, let's get to the list. At number 10, I have Evolution Vat. It is by far the most widely played Simic card on this list, and obviously the least bad since it is at number 10, but I don't think it's especially good either. It is a value engine once you have a bunch of mana and time, but getting there is not easy. In terms of efficiency, it is absolutely horrendous. For that first +1/+1 counter, you have to pay a total of 6 mana, and you have to tap the creature too. It gets sweet once you have a bunch of counters you can double, but it costs 7 mana just to do that. Just having that much mana lying around is nowhere near a foregone conclusion, and if you do have that kind of mana, there are certainly way better things you could be doing with it. Evolution Vat does find its way into some +1/+1 counter EDH decks, and I guess that makes a little bit of sense, but even then, I think you'll find this to be pretty underwhelming. At number 9, I have Living Airship. It's the card on this list that appears in the fewest decks on EDH Rec, but it was at least somewhat passable and limited, so I put it at number 9. Don't get me wrong, a 4-mana 2/3 with flying is not good, and while it does come with regeneration, it doesn't exactly do it efficiently, but there are way worse cards on this list. At number 8, I have Swirling Spriggan. Like Living Airship, it has played very little in EDH, but was a kind of okay card in Limited. It starts with Hill Giant stats, which is not a good place to start. You have to have a pretty good text box to overcome that kind of inefficiency, and the Spriggan doesn't really get there. Changing the color of things is just so rarely relevant in most games of Magic. It actually mattered a little bit in Eventide Limited, a set with lots of color matters stuff, so in the right context it was merely mediocre and not utterly terrible. But yeah, it should never be played outside of that format. At number 7, I have Cytoshape. I'm never a fan of cards like this. Spending mana and a card to simply upgrade one of your creatures for a single turn just isn't going to be worth it 99% of the time. Sure, you can sometimes do some wacky things with it, like copy some incredible bomb, but even then, you'd better be ending the game on the spot when you do it. Otherwise, you're going to be falling behind on subsequent turns since, you used up a card for an effect that is always temporary and often mediocre. You can use it to make combat go your way and stuff like that, but you need things to line up correctly for that to happen, and that is definitely not a guarantee. For something this situational, they should have added a cantrip to it or something to make it not so awful. At number 6, I have Hydroform. I don't like cards that make one creature into a copy of another, and I don't like cards that make one land into a creature either, at least if that's all the card does. Like Cytoshape, Hydroform can be used to ambush a creature and all that, but it has the same problem. Things have to go just right, or it might just be a dead card. The flying does mean you can sometimes treat this as a horrible lightning bolt too, but yeah, I'd rather just run, cards that aren't terrible. At number 5, I have Invert the Skies, yet another highly situational Simic card. So if you use both green and blue mana to cast it, your opponent's creatures all lose flying and yours all gain flying. It is easy to imagine the ideal scenario where suddenly your whole board gets in, or you're able to block all of their stuff. But guess what? In most scenarios, you're going to need to have a significant board presence for this to be worth it. It also doesn't pump your creatures at all or anything like that, so your board has to already be imposing for this to matter. So it isn't even really a payoff for making a bunch of tokens or anything like that. It is an instant, which means sometimes you'll be able to do something with it in combat, but meh. Just play something like Overrun and throw Invert the Skies into the trash. At number 4, it is Merfolk of the Depths. A lot of the cards on this list have been kind of convoluted bad cards, but Merfolk of the Depths is very straightforward. 6 mana for a 4/2 is horrendous, no way around it. A creature would have to have a lot of abilities for that to not be the case, and Merfolk of the Depths just comes with Flash, a keyword ability that is sometimes quite useful, since you can ambush block attackers and stuff, but a 4-2 isn't going to do a good job of that. It will die blocking pretty much anything, and trading a 6-mana card for like a 3-3 isn't what you want to be doing. At number 3, I have Illusion and Reality. I'm a big fan of split cards and modal cards. Flexibility is just really nice in Magic. However, both halves of this one are pretty bad. As I mentioned when talking about Swirling Spriggan, changing the color of things is just way too situational and doesn't come up enough for the Illusion half to be worth it. Now, if the Reality half were actually kind of reasonable, Illusion being so situational wouldn't be the end of the world, but Reality isn't good either. 3 mana to destroy an artifact is incredibly inefficient. I mean, it's definitely more useful than Illusion, but there's no reason to run this over much better cards that can destroy artifacts. At number 2, I have Warping Worm. So to start with, this is a 4 mana 1/1. That's not a good place to begin. And then once you read the text box, it mostly seems worse. For one thing, it has the much maligned phasing mechanic, which means that this 1/1 you paid so much mana for won't even be able to attack and block about half the time. That is, of course, unless you're willing to pump 2 generic, a blue and a green into it to keep it from phasing out. Now the good news is the worm does gradually get bigger as it continually phases out and then back in, but I don't think that makes up for all the other problems this card has. And my pick for the worst Simic card is Malignant Growth, which is both terrible and kind of a flavor fail. So this is basically a reverse Phyrexian Arena. A card like the Arena shows us that losing life to draw cards is well worth it, so it should be a no-brainer that making your opponent lose life to draw cards is not worth it. Now you might be thinking, well yeah, but as time goes on they're going to lose more life and they'll be in more trouble. And I guess that's kind of true, but if you're giving your opponent a bunch of extra cards, well, the game won't be going on for very much longer. This is one of the few cards out there that is actually better because it has cumulative upkeep, because at least once you realize your mistake in playing the card, you can get rid of it by not paying that cost. Flavor-wise, it also doesn't make much sense. The growth side of things is where the damage comes from, I suppose, but if the growth is truly malignant, why is it helping the player out so much? I mean, I get the idea that it eventually kills you, but how is it that it helps you along the way? Anyway, yeah, Malignant Growth is definitely the worst Simic card ever. It's just that bad. Well, that does it for this MTG Top 10. If you're interested in owning any of these cards, like, I don't know, maybe you need some kindling for your fire, you can buy them on Card Kingdom. There is a direct link to each of them in the Card Kingdom store in the description. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you want to catch up on the over 340 MTG Top 10s I've already done, you should see the playlist on your screen now. Thanks for watching.